Hi, Liz here before this episode of Houselights. I just want to give a little quick warning. We are going to be talking about Quiet on Set, which is the newest HBO Max show about the child abuse, specifically sexual abuse towards children, centered television show around Nickelodeon and everything. So I just wanted to put a warning before then. We will be talking about some heavy topics, so, if you can't listen to that, definitely turn this off, and we'll see you next week on Houselights. Thanks so much. Hello, and welcome back to Houselights, your one-stop shop for everything you need to hear about this week in the world of entertainment. As always, I'm your host, Liz Nass, and today I am joined by the amazing, the wonderful
Jada, Vasser,
and
Demonte Thomas.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited for this episode. We have been talking about this episode for like the last few weeks.
Yeah, we have.
And I'm jet setting to Florida. I'm all over the place. So we haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm glad that it's not a one and done sort of topic anymore.
Oh yeah,
because we thought that it might be, but then they came out with a new
episode.
Yeah. So, this week we're going to talk about Quiet on Set.
Yes.
Which was the documentary all about all the, I don't even want to call it a scandal, because that seems like it lessens what happened to the
atrocities.
kids. The atrocities that happened at Nickelodeon. And, sort of like focused on one face behind it, which is Dan Schneider.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question that I want to ask you guys, and I'll explain a little bit about mine, is your background, like, with Nickelodeon and stuff. Like, I was more of a Disney kid, but I always loved, like, iCarly and Victorious. Like, especially Victorious, like, I was that theater kid, right? I wanted to go to Hollywood Arts and everything, but I wasn't a huge Nickelodeon kid, but I wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah, I definitely say I was kind of a mix. I feel like my sister was way more of a Nickelodeon kid, which made me a Nickelodeon kid because we shared the TV. But I definitely agree. I did watch more so Disney. But yeah, I was obsessed with Victorious, iCarly, Drake and Josh. Like, those were the three I probably watched the most. So then when I was watching the documentary, I was like, those are kind of the ones they talked about the most. And I was like, yeah, it'd definitely be the shows that I like the most you talk about.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely say I was a Disney kid too, though. Disney rocked.
I was such a Hannah Montana fan.
Absolutely. Loved all of it.
I recently found a picture of me in a shirt that had Hannah Montana on it, and in the bottom it had a box that you could push and it would sing. A singing shirt?
Wow.
This is technology we've never heard of before.
A singing shirt?
That sounds
that's some
like
Justice stuff.
Technology from like 2006.
No, literally.
Yeah.
Literally. We're just gonna play around with a shirt and have it sing. But
literally, no.
Demonte, were you a Nickelodeon kid?
Yes. My household, we were a Nickelodeon household.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest brother was born in the 90s, so of course, when I was introduced to 90s Nickelodeon, to be more specific, all that Kenan and Kel, the Amanda Show. I remember watching, and it's not like a block anymore. It was on T-Nick. The 90s are all that, but then they changed it to Splat. Then Nick Splat then changed the name around.
Yeah, they changed it a lot.
But I remember just watching like these old shows and then being introduced like the movies, because I still have like the Rugrats movie.
Oh my gosh!
Like the orange,
orange VHS of the Rugrats movie. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yes, so I will say for certain my household is a Nickelodeon household. Yeah. Which is more the reason why I feel the way I do after watching this documentary or docuseries.
So I also with background wise, I feel like we all knew that Dan Schneider was a creep.
Yeah.
Didn't you okay, before you're watching this show, don't you have the feeling that there's something because I guess the first thing I want to talk about is the gross jokes and stuff that they made
like the innuendos.
I don't know, always the feet stuff freaked me out.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. I don't know kids who find that stuff super funny.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, they were definitely especially as I got older and the shows kept going, you could make the argument that they tried to grow with the audience, but they did it wrong. And even when we were young watching it and they came out, I never was a fan of those scenes, those episodes. I was just kind of okay. Yeah, and then as a child, most of it went over my head, so I was like, I don't know what that means, so I'm gonna keep watching. But now looking back as an adult, it's I'm kind of glad I didn't know what that means. 9, 10. when I started watching it, because I'm like, my mama wouldn't have let me watch this if she really knew the jokes they were saying and the stuff they was actually saying on TV. You know what I'm saying? Because I grew up in a household where some stuff I wasn't allowed to watch because of those jokes that, one, I wouldn't get because I was so young, but two, it's not something that you should approach a child at that age anyway.
Right.
So for the fact that these jokes were being written in the show for this specific age group and this audience is ridiculous.
Right. Were either one of you one of the kids that like couldn't watch SpongeBob because their parents said? I was not personally, but there's always Anthony was. There were tons of kids I knew that like my parents won't let me watch SpongeBob. I'm like, okay, freak. Like what do you mean you can't watch SpongeBob?
No, I know a few people who said they couldn't watch SpongeBob. I could watch SpongeBob. I couldn't watch the shows like Family Guy,
okay, yeah,
King of the Hill.
Right.
I couldn't watch shows like that, like shows that you had to stay up to watch and sneak and watch. South Park, here you go. Here you go. I couldn't watch those, even though sometimes I snuck and watch them. Sorry,
yeah,
because I was interested as a kid. I'm like, why can't I watch it? I know.
So I think for me, well, obviously like South Park, Family Guy, and whatnot. I think Ren and Stimpy. Because Ren and Stimpy, there is two versions of it. There's like the original Nickelodeon version, and then there's the I think the adult version that was made for like Spike TV or whatever. I just couldn't watch it because it was like some weird stuff going on. So, but going back to the topic of just the innuendos or just whatever was happening in these shows, I think the thing that stands out to me is Victorious.
Yeah.
Specifically, like the RV episode, like they're stuck in RV.
You mean with the heat?
Yeah, and I looked it up, and like this is like the first image that like came. This is like this. They aired this on like Nickelodeon, so I'm not sure if
is the camera getting this.
If we could just
zoom in.
This like was aired on Nickelodeon, right. So I'm thinking, wow.
And I was thinking, like, I feel like they thought that they could get away with more stuff because, like, there were more shows for like kids, like SpongeBob and stuff like that. And then I think they thought, because there's teens playing, teens playing teens, then that's going to be for older kids. Yeah. And so their defense was always, we're making shows for older kids. But that's not true.
Yeah, right.
You stay on Nickelodeon after SpongeBob is over.
Right. Yeah.
Or Backyardigans.
Exactly.
And then you watch Victorious, and it's all getting the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was definitely young watching Victorious. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it came out like 2010.
Yeah.
So, at the time, I didn't get like the jokes they were making, but looking back at it now, like almost every single episode, there is a feet joke in it.
Right.
Every single episode. Yeah. If not a feet joke, there is some kind of sexual innuendo in it. So there's, I don't know.
Well, and it's not even just the episodes, because what I was mostly interested in when, the documentary was like showing all the content that they have, it was those videos that they would put online as like the video vlogs, the slap. When they started the slap.com, and it was these weird videos of like Ariana Grande like
squeezing a potato.
And it's like she was underage at the time, I believe.
Yeah,
also.
I think so. She was. Yeah.
So it's just weird because and then you see the kids that had to put up with the most then got the most success.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's just so other than Amanda Bynes. And let's talk about it. Yeah. Because Amanda Bynes was totally screwed over. I mean, she just totally was.
Absolutely.
I mean, they said that she was, in the show, they were saying that she was doing the Laugh Factory shows at like 10 years old. Yeah. And I mean, who allows that to happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going at, specifically with documentary. I was like, okay, as much as we're talking about like what happened to these kids, we still got to give it to the parents too. Right. Because it's like you said, at 10 years old doing these shows that were mainly at night and it was mainly adults watching her, like, okay, she may say some funny jokes, but it's like, it's almost as if you're forcing her to grow up too fast to like expect this audience. Because of course at 10 years old, how can you make the jokes that you're making unless someone's coaching you like Dan was doing when she got the Amanda Bynes show, or if you've had any background in it. But at 10 years old, I can't imagine any background. But Amanda Bynes' story, it's just so sad to realize, because like Demonte, I have an older sister who's 10 years older than me, a 90s baby. Yeah. So she grew up when the Amanda Bynes show first premiered. She watched it like in its entirety. And it just sucks to see how these stars end up when they kind of get pushed out of Nickelodeon, and then they kind of get like, okay, we don't need you anymore, we don't want you, we don't like you, go do your own thing. But like they're so messed up, like the way Amanda Bynes is now, like, I'm happy. I hope she's finding some peace in whatever she's doing.
She is becoming, I follow her on TikTok.
Okay.
She's becoming a nail tech.
You know what, girl?
She just got a nail tech license.
Do you, because honestly, whatever you need to do to just bring you back to you,
and if
do
doing
it.
Nails is
if
what
that's
brings
it,
her peace.
look, doing nails make money, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, literally. She's getting
it.
her bag.
She's getting her money, and that's what it needs to do. And people need to leave her alone.
Right. Well, it just sucks when you're talking about like child stars and just like, you know, having to go through so much in their early years. It's like, obviously, if you're a child star, you have so much talent that you can like hone being funny at a young age. Because like, all kids are like super annoying when they're when they're younger, right? But so when you find a kid that's genuinely funny, like Amanda Bynes, you're like, wow, that kid's gonna have so much talent.
Yeah.
But by the time they're out, then they're pushed out.
Yeah.
They're not taken seriously.
Right.
They're pushed out of the industry, and it's just super sad to watch. Me and my roommate, all my roommates, we watched the show together. We were talking this morning actually about how one of the only ones that have really like stuck to the ground and like done real stuff since being a child star is Zendaya. Like, I mean, like, okay, Bridget Mendler, like, she's obviously amazing. She's, like, running this, like, space company. But she's not in acting anymore. She's not doing that. But, like, Zendaya's, like, really one of the only child stars that is, like, still in the same thing that she started and didn't go off to, like, music or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, she had Replay, which is slay.
Yeah. Okay,
obviously.
Popular.
Replay with, just popular? You didn't love it?
You know,
it's not on your Spotify Replay?
It might be. Let me not.
But, like, she's the only one who's really stayed in that lane of acting. And is
that's very true.
And so I don't know what the difference is between it. Because she's also not... Another thing that I think puts some child stars to, like, on a different level is if you're a Nepo baby. Nepo babies usually do a lot better being child stars because they know like the ropes when they go in because their parents can tell them like this is
what happened.
And this is the problem. But Zendaya is like the only non-Nepo baby child star to like really pop off and like keep popping off.
I didn't even think of that. Thinking about who actually like came out of child acting is actually doing what at one point they said is what they want to do for their whole lives. Because a lot of them, even in a documentary, like we said, Amanda Bynes does nails now. But even speaking with Drake Bell's point of view, it's like he lives in Mexico now. Drake Bell doesn't even live here no more. It's like these things are so traumatic that it literally pushes them away from even staying in the same vicinity anymore. So it's just like... And then, I kind of agree, like what you said earlier, like, we always knew these things were happening, but it's kind of funny, because me and Demonte were talking about this, because they mentioned it in the latest episode 5, about how Nickelodeon had 2 child molester arrests 4 months apart, but there were no news articles about it.
Right.
And the journalist asked him, he was like, well, why do you think that is? He's like, I don't know, because now I walk up my house and the news media is there. So it's like, how do you have a company on the same show have 2 child molesters, but there's nothing written about it? Too. On the same network 4 months apart. But we write report on anything else, especially being a journalist and working in news organization. It's like... That's it. That's your story. That's your lead. How did you not catch it?
And it's not like it wasn't something that we haven't covered before.
Exactly.
Because, like, just like, you know, child, you know, abuse in the media, like, with speculated Michael Jackson and stuff like that. That was being covered before that.
Absolutely.
So, and, like, heavily. And, like, not even just, like, covering, like, what was like speculating. So we're not even going to speculate that something bigger is happening at Nickelodeon.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, because I was trying to think, because, you know, I was trying to put together a whole thesis for today. I was trying to pull it all together. But I honestly don't have an answer as to why the media wouldn't be on it. And it's like, you can be in, like, I know that, like, the records were sealed because Drake Bell was a child at the time, but it's not like no one, like, people could have walked in the courtroom. Like, and also just, like, it's on payroll stuff. The like HR, you're firing people. It's like,
I think, in my own opinion, the only folks that know the true answer to that are the executives over at Nickelodeon, or at least the ones that was at Nickelodeon at the time.
Right.
Now they could still possibly be with Nickelodeon because Brian Robbins, the current president of Nickelodeon, he co-created Kenan and Kel. That's like all the way back in the 90s. So it falls on the executives.
Right. The people who are dealing with this are still there.
Yeah. And that's the issue, because it's like, how are you still running a network that has all of this history and then nothing just happens? Even when you're saying about, like, Michael Jackson, that's even a great example, because, like you said, serious investigation, going to his home, looking through his things. Did y'all even go to the studio?
Right, yeah.
Did y'all go to
It's not locked down.
Sunset? Like, it's there.
Go to Burbank and you'll see.
Literally, like, did y'all even step foot in the area? Did you try to talk to any of the kids, the parents even? Like, of course we know Dan, he had it together. Like, he was an actor. He knows how to do a show. But did you even try? Like, I'm so surprised that nobody just tried to go.
Right.
Like, this seems like the biggest journalist they've done.
And also the parents wouldn't come out either.
Yeah.
Like, and I agree with your point. It really does fall on the parents sometimes. Because they were talking about, like, oh, how inappropriate it was that they sent the parents out of the room when they started to talk about, you know, Brian Peck, who did these awful things to Drake Bell. But, like, why didn't any parent go, I'm not leaving?
Yeah.
Like, but I also understand that there's a climate of, like, oh, we don't want to mess this up for our kids.
Right.
So we're going to do what we're told. But I don't know. I feel like there's such a line there. Yeah.
There's extent to that.
Absolutely. I feel like the line was very evident between I'm going to protect my kid and I'm not going to ruin their career, because the examples were there. They were clear as day. And it really just came down to, like, I don't know, maybe some parents had other motives, like, no, this is what we need, this is what the family needs, and it fell on my kid. But I don't know, if I was a parent and I'm hearing all these things, I'm seeing them with my own eyes, my kid can do something else. Like, you know, like, I would hate to take my kid out of what they love to do.
Yeah.
But if I knew it would end like how it ended for a lot of those kids, I'd pull him out. Like, in the recent episode, Brian, he was on All That. His mom popped up.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yes, and she was like, and the journalist asked, she was like, okay, what would you tell any young black actor? Because there's also a lot of racism dealing with Nickelodeon, and especially on All That, they only had 2 black actors, a girl and a boy. And she said, if you see something wrong, pull them out, no matter what. Like, it was too many examples that proved to them that this was not the spot for their kid. But they just didn't do anything about it. And some of those damages are just irreversible.
Right. And talking about, like, that whole thing about the diversity issue too, it was actually disgusting to watch Dan Schneider in his interview be like, oh, I did so much for diversity because I put in
Keenan and Kel.
Yeah, because I put
in
Keenan and Kel. It's like, that doesn't add to diversity. You add one token.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, like,
you make one token show, and now you did all you can do for black people. No, and like those 2 actors said, they said, so not only did you overlook us, you answered and continued to overlook us by saying you helped somebody else.
Right.
That doesn't change what you did to us, because you didn't help us.
Right.
Yeah.
We were still the only 2 black people on this all-white cast, and you didn't give us any of the opportunities you gave them. And not only that, we were fired. You let us go.
Yeah.
And they still stayed on the show. So it's like all the apologizing in that whole interview, which of course he came with an interview after the docuseries released.
Can I say something really quick? Was that Tebow that was
Yes, that was Tebow. No, because
dude from iCarly,
yes. Tacos on the stick.
Bro, when I saw him, I was like, this has to be, they had to perform this. This is a performance.
Yeah.
Literally.
Because there's no way you get somebody from your show and they're like, of course I'll interview
And then
Dan.
post it on your actual YouTube channel.
Right, and then post it on your Instagram.
So,
oh my God. It's on your Instagram and your YouTube. Like, come on now, this is another show.
Right,
this
literally.
is a show.
Yeah.
This is a mini doc for the documentary that
the
went
person
out.
that you're putting on the payroll is interviewing
It's
you.
interviewing
asking you
you.
the hard questions about
Right,
your...
ask you the hard questions, like, come on, Dan, did you? No.
did you? No.
It's
Did
just
you do it,
crazy.
Dan? What?
Well, and going back to the mom and Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. He said he was like 13 around the time they got fired. They didn't talk for years afterwards when his mom did the right thing for him.
Yes.
I thought that was crazy because I assumed because they were on the documentary together that, like, okay, like, they obviously I knew they were mad at each other at the time because she brought that up, but they just recently started talking again.
Yes.
Right.
I think that's kind of crappy of Brian, honestly. Like,
no, low key, because when I saw it, I was like, because I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, you see, it got rocky. You know, he had some resentment. He was angry. But no, when she talked about Valentine's Day rolled around, I was like, you mean 2024?
You mean
Valentine's
2024
Day
right now?
And he's like, he's a dad. He has a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I'm like,
And you
that
harbored
broke
that?
your relationship so much with your mom that you just got back in contact with her?
Yeah,
I'm
all
like,
that, which was in the 90s, early 2000s. Like,
and
that's
it took
how
the
long?
documentary, it's also interesting to note about how he said it took that documentary to realize that was the trauma, that was the reason for
but
why he was acting that way.
But you also came on the show talking about your trauma. So
That's
I don't
true,
understand
though.
how that made you realize, like, that thing airing. And then
That's
also,
true, though.
and your mom still has to text you Happy Valentine's Day first?
Yeah, no.
After you watch your mom be like, I was so upset that he... And I was like, what? Sorry.
I think with that, with the factor of Brian not speaking to his mother for many years, because I think around the time he was on all that, it's like 2004, 2005-ish, so a little bit over almost a decade ago, honestly. But I think trauma itself, that's just it, is trauma. You react to things in a different way, in ways in which most other people may not do. And that includes possibly not talking to a prominent family member for years.
Yeah.
So I think with
Because
that,
they were associated with that moment. I see what you're saying. Yeah, for sure.
I think one of the 4 episodes, Brian's mom said when they told him the news that he was being fired, he's not being brought back. He grew up. Like she's seen the young man come out of him that day. So I think it started with that. And of course that's like years and years later. But it takes time to get clarity on some things. So possibly the documentary was a way of saying, wow, like I really went this long while talking to my mom.
Yeah.
I was laughing because I was like, oh, Demonte's so much more empathetic than me. I'm like, how could you be mad at your mom? Love your mom. But no, I totally see what you're saying.
And, at the time, he had every right to be angry. But I think at the end of the day, it really did seem like the mom was trying to look out for her son.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I was in that position, me personally, if I was in that position, if I seen anything or just seen one clip of any kind of sexual innuendo, I'm pulling my child out of the show. Regardless, I'll break the contract if I have to.
Absolutely.
But they're leaving Nickelodeon Studios. But I think there's many different elements that we may never know or find out unless Brian or both Brian and his mom continues to speak out on it, and then just give advice to any actors or actresses, especially black actors or black actresses that are on Nickelodeon right now or anywhere, to just be careful, just be aware.
Yeah, I think it was a great vulnerability moment. I think I feel like that piece there, like having them interact and them being like so open about like, this is the first time we've like sat together and just, you know what I'm saying, really been in each other's presence. I think that really opens up like how much, like you said, trauma and how much these kids went through that it's impacted them as adults. Because even like that, you can say the Drake Bell interviews when he's like, this is the first time people knew like John Doe was me. This is the first time I'm saying it on camera. Like there's some things I don't even know how to say, not even on camera, just out of my mouth. And it's just like, it really puts in perspective, like, because it's funny because before the documentary, I remember all of like the little DUI articles you hear about Drake Bell, when he crashed his car, when he ran away for those 3 days, he left his phone.
That was
and people are like, what's happening to Drake Bell? But it's crazy to see how much something can just truly change your mind and impact you. And he's like,
have that impact on you too.
And he's like, I never knew that was the reason I started spiraling in my adult years.
And I think that people were just like, oh, just another crazy child star.
Right,
and it's like they didn't know. And I'm like, okay, we always say just another crazy child star. Like, how many times has this happened before to these like children and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And just like how it manifests. I mean, it manifests in a way that like is destructive to yourself. Like just so sad. But talking about the mom and how she absolutely did the right thing and stuff like that. On the other end of the spectrum, I wanted to bring up that mom that obviously super hard situation, but the mom of the kid who got the email.
Oh, Brandy?
Brandy's
mom?
Yeah. Oh my God. What do you mean you're not going to tell the police?
I just don't understand. And that her as a mom was probably my biggest example of I just don't understand those parents. Because her Brandy at the time, And I guess it also speaks volume that it's her mom and not even Brandy speaking herself about the situation. But the fact that Brandy was not only 9 years old, she was a background character for these shows.
Background character, yeah. It's not like she was like the Amanda Bynes
star.
Show.
No, this was happening to all of the characters. So you really have to take into account how many of the feature characters are being affected. Not only the main stars with names on the show, with script lines, how many people that pop in for 2 seconds are being targeted. Do you know what I'm saying? How many people that walk down the street to be like a side character are being affected because that story, and like you said, it really didn't make no sense. It was like, oh, I can't call the police. All I have to do is make sure she's far away as possible.
She was worried about herself getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not going to put your kid first and be like, oh, and make sure that this doesn't happen to another kid.
Exactly. Because even going to court and you heard about all the other little girls that were affected by this one man, you had all the evidence to lock him up.
Right.
You had everything people wish they had in cases like this.
Right.
And you literally chose to be selfish and say, no, I'm not gonna send him to the police. I'm not gonna do anything for me, like you said. And it's also sucky. I kind of felt off about it because she started off by saying how she wanted to be an actor, and her mom didn't let her.
And her mom was like, no, it's awful. And she's like, but I'm gonna let my daughter do it.
So I kind of saw how this was going, and it's like, maybe you didn't go to the police because you wanted your daughter to get as much as possible, but it's like, your mama already knew how Hollywood was. That's why you couldn't do it.
Right.
Why not listen and pass that on to your kids versus living through your kid? I think that's what happened. She was living through Brandy. Then Brandy hit what her mother was talking about, but now it's, you know what I'm saying?
There's no other explanation for it. When you allow your 9-year-old to email with a producer,
with a grown man,
grown man, because they just seem so nice.
No.
It's a grown man.
This is an 11-year-old, and this is a grown man.
That grown man should be contacting you about your child, and if he needs to talk to her, you be in the room present.
Yeah.
Or anything stays at the studio, he's emailing you.
And I guess you could say, like, we didn't know how bad the internet was. Any contact, even if in person, any contact with a grown man with a 9-year-old is, like, gonna be problematic.
Especially when you're dealing with business, because they're just she's not gonna understand at 9.
No.
To talk about, like, her career and things
even if
like
they are talking about a career, like, she can barely spell.
Right. Like, she doesn't, all she sees that she's in front of the camera having fun. Like, she doesn't understand the money or the contracts or anything. So you're just...
So what do you think they're talking about?
Literally, what are they talking about? What are they talking about? Come on now, what are they talking about?
That's insane.
So the person we're talking about in mind, Jason Andy, just clarify. Well, not clarify, but just background information. According to Business Insider, he only received 6 years. It's not just even talking to Brandy, but for a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right, because he was the one that had like the souvenirs, right?
Yes.
From the
So yes.
So and then the other person, I think if we were going to talk about him, Brian Peck.
Yeah.
He only received 6 months, to my understanding.
Seeing all those glowing letters from other children.
From other child actors supporting him.
And it's like, why would any court think that serves a purpose? They're on his payroll. They
literally.
Like, what do you think was going to happen? Like, why don't you bring in people that, like, were above him in managing or something like that? Or, I don't know, adults?
Maybe.
But you're going to bring in children to write you letters of recommendation.
Like, what is this? This is not a college scholarship. Like, what are we talking about? And the judge took it and ran. And it's like, is this how the court of law works?
And this person, he only served a few months jail or prison, and then got to, he had to register as a sex offender, but he basically went to Disney Channel.
Yeah, he worked on Zack and Cody.
He went to Disney Channel, another kids network, and worked on Zack and Cody.
Zack and Cody, yeah.
And also in a weird, I just want to point out, his role on Zack and Cody was London Tipton's mirror.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
The voice
was
was
literally talking about children's appearances
through voice acting.
And that was his role after he was
is this still
convicted.
Not screaming any wrongness to
it's
you?
It's the fact that Disney Channel picked him, even though he was registered as his person. So,
and it's not like nobody from Nickelodeon talks to Disney Channel.
Exactly.
Right.
Like,
how
they
do you
just
think
don't
they make
communicate.
new shows?
Exactly. Like, how do you think the crossovers happen? They talk to each other.
Right.
They talk to each other.
And that was one of my discussion questions. I was going to ask, like, do we think that Disney Channel is the same way? I mean, it's pretty much the same thing.
It's
just different
Absolutely.
people that are running it.
Yeah, I think so. Me and Demonte were talking about this. I think Disney Channel is absolutely the same way. I feel like the difference with Disney Channel, especially with like, if you go way back to those shows, Hannah Montana, Sunny with a Chance,
Wizard of Waverly
Place, the Jonas Brothers show. I think the main difference would be they were a little older, and it was a lot of personal relationships tied into everything they had going on, but they still had no protector. So I think the main thing with these networks is like there's nobody there specifically for the actors.
Right.
Like there's executives, there's directors and producers, but like you said, they're on a payroll. So at the end of the day, they're gonna make you do what they need you to do to get their money. But there's no one advocating for when the kids need a break, when the kids are going through stuff, or specifically Disney Channel with teenagers when they're going through real teenage stuff, but they don't have that adult to guide them, to counsel them, to get them out of those places. So that ends with like how a lot of actors do with addictions. They go down a dark road, jail time, or
with Demi Lovato. With
or in
Disney
some
Channel.
cases they're not here anymore because they just go down that deep dark path and they have nobody to bring them out of, which is like, and then I can see it though how hard it is because those shows take years. Right. So this wasn't like a 2-month thing. Okay, the show's done. These were years and years. You're seeing these people every day from sun up to sundown. Like these are repeated actions, and it's like, how do you overcome that? No,
and that's the thing we usually see that they sometimes don't. They
don't overcome it, but then like you said, that goes to another crazy child actor. But it's like nobody's there for them. No. So if that were you, you'd probably be another crazy child actor because nobody's there for you.
I wanted to, but before we wrap up and everything, I wanted to specifically talk about Dan Schneider as well, and just like talk about that line because, while obviously he let a lot of really terrible jokes go through and all this stuff, and he knew that he was pretty much harboring pedophiles, Drake Bell says that he's the only one that supported him at the channel. So where do we fall with our opinions of Dan Schneider?
So I think, and it could be the fact that Drake at the time didn't really catch on to what Dan was doing, because Dan was a writer and creator. But either way, that still, in my opinion, doesn't make up for the misogyny or racism or sexist acts that he had his writers do on a kids show or writing a kids show. So just overall, for Drake to say, yeah, Dan was pretty much the only person to support me, if that is the case, then Dan was the only person to support him. But I think the fact of the matter is,
it doesn't erase it.
It doesn't erase it. No. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely say I agree. I think even if Dan didn't do a lot of like anything you say to the level that Brian Peck or the Jason guy,
which is like the worst that it can get. Like you shouldn't get a pat on the back. For like,
but it's like this was still your network. At some level, you were their top.
These are
guy.
These are your kids when they're there.
Literally, so it's like, the fact that, one, you don't pick up to messages or you don't pick up to these things, and two, if somebody came to you about it and you chose not to act, you're still at fault because you were the top guy. You were head CEO in charge. So these people are coming to you and you choose to ignore it. And then the other thing is, he's in the interview that he had, he was like, if I saw it, I could go back, I'd change it. You did notice it.
Yeah.
They came to you.
You were like one of the only executive that knew that Drake Bell was being abused.
You did know it.
It wasn't just the Amanda Show. It was Zoe 101, Drake and Josh, iCarly, Victorious.
And it's like this is the first time anyone complained about one of his shows.
Literally, no. You knew it, and you saw these things happening, but you did not act on it, so you are still at the biggest fault. Because had it not been for you, there'd be no Nickelodeon. Had it not been for you, there'd be none of these shows in the first place. So,
and one of the things is like, why now did he choose to apologize when these things came out in Jeanette McCurdy's book as well?
That's what they mentioned too. Exactly.
And it's like, so why is right now the time instead of
back then?
I think it's truly because people can see it. People see the jokes. I think it's truly about the medium. Jeanette McCurdy's book was fantastic. By the way.
I loved it.
I literally read it in like 3 days.
Me too. I loved it.
But because people can literally see the jokes in front of them, I think that this was the right medium for him to be like, oh, I can't hide from this anymore.
Yep. I definitely agree, because even in written form, somebody can be like, well, I can't see it. Right. You know, there's no video proof. I don't remember it. But when you put it in the way of an actual documentary, and then you have those flashback clips, and you have the side to side of what they look like as an adult, and then them in the clip, it's like there's no running. Like, you did this. We performed these acts and you let it happen. So what are you going to say now? You're going to come out with an apology like most people do, but there's no running. Like you said, there's nothing to hide from. We see it all now. They put it on the table, and that's just that.
And it's the fact that that's not an apology that was scripted.
By any means, it's not an apology.
And again, like Brian mentioned in episode 5, before Dan became this big shot Hollywood executive, he was an actor.
Right.
That was not an apology, because if it was truly a heartfelt apology, you would apologize decades ago. You would apologize when Jeanette's book came out. You would apologize when Amanda Bynes was going through what she went through. You don't apologize to cover yourself when more and more people are now fully, literally seeing what has been going on behind the scenes. And that's just it. That's all what we know. Fortunately, there could be more that we don't know. But for Dan to be in that kind of position and then try to, in my opinion, gaslight, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." You had years, sir.
Yeah, for sure.
And talking about people like Jeanette McCurdy, who, you know, obviously weren't the brunt of all of, you know, the worst things at Nickelodeon, but still really got kind of screwed over by Dan Schneider, you know, screwed out of her own show, and then
Sam McCat, right?
And then Victoria Justice as well. This is not in the documentary, but there were, you know, when all these things are coming up on TikTok, of course, I'm engaging all the material. I'm a researcher when it comes down to it. But she didn't hang out with him like the rest of the cast, specifically Ariana Grande. And so she was supposed to have a spin-off show. She was supposed to release an album like right after the show stopped. And she got completely dropped from all of that because she didn't go over to one of his like hot tub nights that he would have with the cast of Victoria. So it's like, it's not about even like heartbreak, like, you know, whether you were a pedophile or not, which is obviously the worst thing in the world, but it was all about retribution for him. Like, that was his way of like controlling these kids, controlling the narrative, was like retribution for not making him seem cool enough to like hang with the kids.
Messing with his public image got you out of there. Like, all that matters was how people viewed him. It doesn't matter what happened to you. As long as Dan was still Dan, things could go smoothly. I agree. Yeah, for sure.
The question that I want to end with, this was a real thinker for me today. I was thinking about it. I just wanted to wrap it up with, you know, there's people that are still profiting off of these IPs, like that were child actors and that know Dan and that specifically know people that were, you know, that have, you know, failed as child actors, you know, pretty much have been failed by the system. Like Matt Bennett, who played Robbie Shapiro, he's still doing his DJing with all Nickelodeon music and Disney music called iParty 101. He goes across the entire country profiting basically off of these IPs. And then the iCarly reboot with, you know, Miranda Cosgrove and
got
Nathan.
Canceled.
What?
Yeah, it got canceled.
I was gonna say, I thought it was canceled.
Yeah.
Well, they still did it for
Yeah,
like
they-
a
yeah,
season
they
or
still did it,
whatever.
they did it.
But
They had like 2 seasons, but I think it's canceled.
I want to hear from both of you. Do you think that this is unethical when they know what has happened? But literally the other day on my TikTok, it was like, new iParty 101 is like in South Carolina or something.
I think to a certain extent, yes, it is, because you also just have to know, if you're like, say you're a Matt Bennett and you choose to just go on with like iParty, which is crazy, because when iParty came to Detroit on my birthday, I went.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Wait, listen, I'm not saying that it's ethical, but I am saying that it is fun, and Robbie Shapiro was my childhood crush as a kid.
It was so fun. It was so fun, but I think now, like, if it came now, I wouldn't do it, because I just feel like...
Well, my thing isn't even like the people going to it. Like, it's not unethical to go to it because it's like, it's a fun thing. I mean, like, the people running it and are profiting on it.
I definitely, like, Because even with me, if I was in that space and then, like, they're like, oh, you could go on tour and just perform all these songs, but then, like, hearing, like, people that I knew personally come out about their experiences, maybe I even experienced it too, I just couldn't put myself in the headspace. Because I feel like it would give me flashbacks to listen to those songs, to remember how hard it was to make the songs, what we had to go through to perform the songs, put it on TV.
Right, so I should be able to profit off it. Yeah, I get
that. And then it just feels like kind of a slap in the face a little bit. Like, I don't want to be mean when I say it, but I just feel like the people that choose to still profit off of it, but then come out with statements like, oh no, I fully support the people that are speaking up. It's very brave of you. It's very brave of you. But how brave is it for you to say that and then be someone that person may confide in, but then they open Instagram and they hear a song and it's just like, it reverts them back to all the work they've done. It reverts them, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
To all the work they have to do now because now the world knows. So now this isn't just a personal thing, this is a public thing. And one thing I wish that would also stop is people would stop rushing people to speak out if they have experiences.
Right.
Because that's not how you help people going through something. You have to let people take their time.
Yeah.
And even sometimes with things like that, people profit off of it. It could be kind of a rush factor. Because it's like, okay, these songs are still playing.
Yeah.
You can speak now, you know? Or even, I especially think people wanted, did Matt speak out? I think I saw something. But I do know people in his comments like, okay, you're still going to do these songs. You're not going to say nothing.
Right.
Like, we're just going to go on
this
tour.
This is still going to be like your whole personality.
This is going to be your job.
Yeah.
Like, you just don't have anything to say. Where half of the people went through this horrible stuff and you're going to play their song first. Like, this couldn't be a thing.
And you're best friends with Ariana Grande still. And
literally. And she went through some stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Some stuff. So it's like, and to me, I don't know. It feels like a slap in the face a little bit just to still do it knowing what it comes with.
Right.
But I mean, if you've been doing it for so long, that's all you know.
And I liked your point also of like, I put in the work to make these songs happen, like on Victorious.
Literally,
I should be able to still profit off of it.
Yeah, that's true.
And say, and maybe that is his way of like reclaiming what happened on Victorious, is being like, well, now I get paid to DJ the songs that I made with Dan Schneider, you know?
Yeah.
And I get to do it on my own without having to listen to him. So I see both sides.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah.
So I think it's unethical.
Okay.
Full stop. And I have reasons for it. Mainly because
speak your truth.
I have reasons for
and I have reasons.
Come on now,
Let me be clear.
Let me be clear.
But no, mainly because I think Matt Bennett, he was much older than all of the main cast members at the time. So I'm saying that he probably knew, but if you had any kind of knowledge of what was going on, or even now, not even before this documentary came out, but just like YouTube docuseries all on Dan Snyder or whatever, you're still kind of benefiting and profiting off of this one thing that gave so many people traumatic experiences. So that's one thing. So the second thing is, I think with folks like Jeanette McCurt, like the iCarly reboot, the main thing with that is Sam's going to come back? Jeanette says she's not going to come back to that show at all. The same with Noah Muck, who plays Gibby. He said he's not coming back. I love Gibby.
I love Gibby.
So, but you had at least two folks of the main cast, or that's not even the point. You have two folks saying they're not coming back. They're saying they're not coming back for a reason. It could be because they're busy, or they just simply don't want to come back, or because they had a bad experience during the original run, in which the network did not help them at all, which kind of brings the question, why go with the reboot? Same thing could be said about like the Zoe 101 movie.
Right, I forgot that happened.
I forgot all about
that.
I
didn't see it, but
okay.
I think, and to a certain extent, it is unethical. Now, of course, if Matt truly, honest God, didn't know what was going on, then that's one thing. But if you're still making money off of just something that most folks were getting like traumatic events or experiences off of, then that's just scumming, honestly.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Chatting it up and
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
I'm a Houselights fan. I love Houselights.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
I'm an All Shades of Chocolate fan. And just throwing it out.
Throw another.
All Shades of Chocolate, our award-winning podcast on the State News Podcast Network. Listen to it. It's
Listen to
amazing
us.
and wonderful.
Absolutely.
Love. Yeah, if you love Houselights, I'm sure you'll love All Shades of Chocolate.
You'll love it.
So.
You'll love it.
But I will see you guys next week for the last week, I think, of the season of Houselights.
Oh my god, we're almost over.
We're almost over. Well, bye.
Bye.